Oh boy. Wow.
I'm a self-proclaimed farmer.
What's up, Woods Edge students? Welcome back to another episode of the WESM podcast. This is episode 4, I believe, because we're still counting. I am here back again with my counterpart, Jack Sharp. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you so much, Landon.
Jack,
it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad you like it there here. Tell me one interesting fact about your life right now.
My life right now. Okay. Okay. Wait. Story or fact?
You can give me a 1-minute story. Go.
Okay. Yesterday, Jack was he had an upset tummy, and Taylor noticed that his lips were turning blue. Well, what had happened was he was pushing poop out so hard that all of the blood from his face was like forced down into his stomach and his muscles pushing it out.
Bro.
Yeah.
Dang.
And it smelled really bad. So.
Yeah. Day in the life of Jack.
Oh.
And our guest today, not back again, but to us, he's back again.
Yeah.
Anyway, point intro, is Jeremiah Thompson.
Yes.
Jeremiah, welcome to the podcast. My phone is glitching out so bad right now. Thanks, iPhone. Jeremiah, welcome onto the show.
Thank you.
They know about you already, so I don't have to do the tell one thing about you. So tell us one interesting fact going on in your life right now.
Well, I can't really tap that story.
When's the last time you lost color in your lips from pooping, Jeremiah?
That name was
Never.
tough.
I don't know. I don't really have one. Really exciting's going on.
Aw.
Look for a new job. I don't know.
Yeah. I know, at least you're looking. At least you're looking.
Yeah. It's hard right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything interesting going on in my life at all either.
You're like almost married.
I'm almost married. I'm engaged. But like, I'm not married till March 5th next year.
No, March 5th this year, right? That's coming up. That's coming up really fast, right?
Well, not really.
It's like 2 months from now.
It didn't seem like it's coming up fast at all.
That's so far away.
I know it's far away, but we'll make it. So, this week we're in week 2 of our sermon series Snapshot. Briefly summing this up, I've done a summary of this like 8 times, I feel like, in the past 2 weeks. Snapshot is a sermon series talking about little snippets in your life that seem like the biggest deal in the world, like you aren't gonna reach the end, you can't see past this, and it's over like that. And you look back on it in your life and you're like, wow, that was literally only 2 weeks, but for whatever reason, it felt like a year. And yesterday, Jessica Frazier was awesome, and we love when she comes and speaks to you guys, and we also learned so much from her. And her main focus was just focusing on this eternity that we have with Jesus, right? Like throughout all of these snapshots, throughout seasons of our lives here on earth, we have this eternity. And she uses Psalm 84:10. It says, "For a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere." So a snapshot in a day in a court with Jesus is better than 1,000 days anywhere else. And so that was my focus, was focusing on this eternity that we have with Jesus. And so, boys, Jack and Jeremiah, here we go, Snapshot week 2. I feel like what we need to do is we each need to share, once again, a snapshot in our lives that we didn't think we were going to get out of. I know we already shared, so maybe we can just ask Jeremiah this question. But
He can share first.
Yes.
If I think of a new one.
Okay, great.
Then I'll share.
So Jeremiah, if you can think about like a snapshot or a period of time in your life that you did not think you were going to get out of, and then it was like, oh wow, I'm out of it. That was cool. And then you look back on it and you're like, dang, that was nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things, but I think probably one of the the bigger ones, at least right now, was whenever I was coming out of a relationship. Kind of ended very abruptly, and you know how it is whenever you come out of a relationship that hoping was going to work out, and then it just kind of gets your whole world just kind of feels like it's falling apart. But then whenever you realize that it's a season, and it in the grand scheme of things it is very short, and then if you allow God to be like, okay, God, what did you want me to learn from that season? And then God's like, okay, here's what I want to reveal to you, what I want to show to you. Know that your life's not over. In the grand scheme of things, relationships not over till it's over. So you never know. Yeah, you're Landon. You're
engaged to the one that.
Yeah. So in that sense, like you never know what God's gonna do. You never know what because like you've talked about before. You weren't ready. And then what? God's like, just hold on, wait.
Yeah.
What was it? 2-3 years?
Yeah.
And so that's what God loves to do. But yeah, I would say that's maybe the more recent one. But I've had other times where it's like, God, why am I here? What am I doing this for? It may be hard, it may be difficult, but God always turns it around. God always is like, hey, here's why. Just keep worshiping. Just keep pressing in. And I think another thing, just always trying to have a good attitude about stuff, even whenever you're going through hard stuff. It's how you respond in the waiting that will make you or will break you.
Yeah, that's good.
One thing that you said, the just wait. I feel like that is something that God is like always speaking. I know over me,
absolutely. Probably
over a lot of people, if not everyone. Everyone can slow down and wait.
For real.
For me, another season type story. It's a relationship focused. So
I'm gonna share one too.
Maybe
relationship.
Cool.
So.
Maybe more. It's work relationship wise, so it may not apply to all of you guys watching or listening. But it's about friendship, so
it works.
It works. Okay. For those of you who don't have a job yet, when you get a job, a full-time job, a large portion of your life is spent at that job. So the people that you surround yourself with, without like even like noticing or having the ability to be like, no, they become a big part of your life. Like you spend a lot of your life there.
You don't have a choice, really.
You don't have a choice. And that's not a bad thing. Yeah. But so I have been through a couple of transitions in the workplace where people who over time had become some of my best friends left. And you spend time like building a relationship and spending time with people. And it's like, you look at it, you're like, man, I could do this forever. Like spending time with these people, I could do this forever. And then they're gone. And it's like, your whole world kind of like falls apart. Yeah. It doesn't matter if they left in a good way or a bad way. The fact that they were there and now they're not is hard. Yep. And just looking back on it, like there are lots of times where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I know that I've been called to do this, but this is just too hard. And And the one thing that God was speaking over me was like, just wait. Just wait. And I waited, and like things are great.
Yeah.
And that's what happens every time. Like you don't work here anymore. And like we spent all of our time together, and I'm getting a little teary, but it's okay. Like I know that just because you're not around anymore doesn't mean that like our relationship is over. The relationship is going to change because we're not going to be together all the time. But it's hard. But the eternity mindset, like I know one thing that I have kind of realized is, if we don't put Jesus first in everything else is really hard. Whether it's a relationship, like a girlfriend or a boyfriend, a husband, wife, fiance, or just a friendship. Like there's times where I look back and I'm like, man, was I putting those people in the place that maybe Jesus should have been? Because when things change, if Jesus is top, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to be hard, but things are much easier because you're the one thing that has stayed consistent. I know who I am in you. I know why I'm here. So that's that. I don't know how long it was.
It's good.
That's my story.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, I'll share mine and then we can do the thing. So I feel relationships may be, this isn't a word, but the most snapshotty thing in your life.
Yeah.
Friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, you go through school, and so you have classes with certain people, and next year you don't have a class with them anymore. And if that friendship was kind of surface level and you didn't hang out outside of school, then you probably don't talk to that person anymore at all, just because of how that goes. But I'll share a relationship story, because just because I'm engaged now doesn't mean, well, obviously doesn't mean all my relationships were successful, because then I would have, anyway, it's fine. So I had my first ever, not serious, but I call it serious because we did it for over a year, so it made it feel like it was serious in a way. Yeah.
That's serious.
Yeah, that's fair. So I started dating this female, senior summer out of high school. And so she was going to be a senior the next year, so she would be still in high school, I would still be in college, all of that good stuff. And so since this was the first girl that I dated longer than 2 weeks, that's not a joke, longer than 2 weeks. All my girlfriends before that lasted 2 weeks, which is probably a good thing, honestly. Anyway, that's a side tangent. So basically, like Jack was saying, man, I put this girl on every pedestal that I possibly could, even over activities that I would normally do in my life that are very important to me, over my family, all that good stuff, actually bad stuff. But so she was in a place that she shouldn't be, and go to college. I do my first year, and we make it through the first year where I'm in college and she's in high school, which, I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's a hard thing to do. I'm 3 hours away. Sophomore year of college rolls around. She's now a freshman in college, and we break up I don't know, maybe 2 months into the school year. And so obviously that completely wrecks me, because we made it through a tough year that I spent all this effort driving back and then driving back to college, and that it just wrecked me, and I fell into depression, bad. I wouldn't sleep because I was so just caught up in this idea okay, I don't have this thing that I relied on, the place that Jesus should have been. And so I listened to music all night. I wouldn't sleep at night. I would wake up, go to class, come home and nap all day, and then go to the gym. But this, for about 2 months, I was extremely sad. This is all I could think about. It affected my friendships, my life, all those things. And until I turned to Jesus and was like, hey, like, I cannot handle this on my own. Like, I'm literally falling apart and I can't control how I'm feeling. So if you could please help, that'd be awesome. And so after those 2 months, it kind of led to this like resurgence of my life. And during the next like 6 months, I'd never been more motivated before than I was then, like all these things. That was just God kind of renewing my soul. You know, because obviously we know that God forgives us, but like just the process of renewing your soul just back to the wholesome state can kind of take some time if you continually put things that should not be where they are. And so, you know, those 2 months seemed like forever, and I can think back and, you know, almost like put those emotions back on me for like a minute and like put myself in those shoes again, and it's like I can't believe how I went through that. But those 2 months seemed like a year. I was like, I don't like the school I'm in anymore. I don't like my roommate. He snored. It's fine. But yeah, man, those 2 months seemed like eternity. But looking back on it, like I'm engaged now. I've been at a great job for a year. And like that was literally just 2 months out of my life, and now we're here.
Yeah.
All right, so we've each shared a snapshot in our lives. Now I'm going to read to us Matthew 22, 37 through 39. It says, "And he said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And second is like this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself.'" And so I want us to talk about what this means to us and what we think this looks like actually living it out. So loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and then loving your neighbor as yourself. I'm going to share first here. So it says, love your neighbor as yourself. I was reading this book called The Disciplines of a Godly Man, and there's a chapter on like a spouse, loving your wife, leading her, etc. And it talks about it. It shares a verse, which I don't remember, but I remember like the premise of it, but not the actual anyway. And it talks about how you have to love your wife, of course. Like loving your wife is so important. But in there, it talks about like you also have to love yourself. Like if you don't love yourself properly, then you cannot love your wife properly. And so here it's saying you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So, I mean, if you aren't loving yourself and respecting yourself and taking care of yourself, then you aren't going to be able to have the capacity to love other people the way that Jesus wants you to love them. If you aren't spending enough time with Jesus, then how are you going to portray his love to other people if you aren't in relation with him? And so I think we read this verse, and the first thing is like, oh yes, I love my neighbors, I'm nice to people, like that's awesome. But the intentionality of it, like it's almost like, man, I can go up to Jack and be, you know what, I'm gonna say these things to Jack, I'm gonna be nice to Jack. But in my experiences, when I spend time with Jesus versus when I'm not spending enough time with him, I don't know, like in my emotion or my consciousness when I'm talking to someone, it's almost like I'm not even in the conversation sometimes when you're complimenting someone, when you're asking them how their day is, because you ask how their day is and it's like, it's good, and you're like, sick, and then you keep walking. But it's like, what if you stopped and took just 2 minutes, 2 more minutes to be like, nice man, like what's going on though? Like how, you know, like 2 minutes. And then they would probably say something for like a minute and then you continue on, but that would mean so much to that person that you wouldn't even know. And you get to that point by putting yourself aside in that instance and being like, okay, like how would Jesus love this person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my tangent.
Yeah.
Y'all might
No, that's good. I like the point that you brought up. Love it. Like, I think like the loving others the way you love yourself. I think it can be taken a couple ways. Like a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, love yourself," and like it's in a selfish way. And like some Christians be like, "Don't love yourself, don't do the self-love thing." But it's like, okay, but if you are not seeing yourself the way God sees you, because I think so often we forget that we are loved. We forget that we're chosen. We forget that we have a calling on our lives. So we see ourselves as less than who God's called us to be. So then out of that, we do not love people well because we don't think we maybe don't deserve love. Maybe we haven't been loved well, whatever the case may be. But in knowing God and knowing how much he loves us, it's out of that outpouring that we love others, that we see ourselves the way God sees us, so then we love others. So I think that's a really good point.
I don't think I have anything really new to add. Like that with along the lines of what you said, and you said, like, first, we have to love God with all of our heart, mind, and soul. Without being able to do that, we cannot love ourselves. And without being able to love ourselves, we cannot love others. So, like, it's like a domino effect. And the verse tells you, like, first and foremost, so, like, step one,
do this.
This is what you need to do. And it just, like, once you can do that, you flick the domino, and then
everything else goes.
Everything kind of falls into place. But it's something you have to continually work on.
Absolutely.
There's times where I'm really good at the dominoes, like loving God, loving myself, loving others. And then there's times where I've noticed that I'm not great at loving others or myself. And it's not because, like, it's not from a situation there. Really, it's from the root of maybe I'm not loving God with all of my heart, mind, and soul. So when you hop back to that, you fix that. And some people are like, that they make it to loving God with all their heart, mind, and soul, and everything is great. And then they're like, okay, done. And I found myself doing that sometimes. So, like, you do have to keep going back. It's something you have to continually work on.
I think also, like, I think as Christians, we forget the love part. We forget that our relationship with God it's a love affair. It's not, we're not doing it out of obligation or duty, but I think so often as Christians and even people who, like, work in the church, it's like, it's not work for the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. It's not do the things for, it's love. It's God wants us to abide. God wants us to be in him. And then out of that, we, of course, we work and we do all those things, but we so often forget why we're doing it. We think we can achieve God's love by doing things, or we think that that's what brings us fulfillment, when in reality, it's abiding, it's loving God for what he's done for us. And then, sometimes you just have, like, I've had, quiet times before where it's like, I'm trying to read my Bible or whatever, and then sometimes God's just like, no, I want to, let me speak life over you, let me love you. And it's really a feeling that I don't think many Christians have ever experienced, because that's not what we're taught in church. We're not taught to sit and to abide, because God just loves to show up. He just doesn't, he's not obligated to, but he just loves to show up. He loves to just remind you of his goodness. And I think that would, if more people and more, like, you students, how much God loves you, how much he, has a calling for your life, that, it's not all on you. Like, I think so often that's where we mistake our relationship with God, is that we got to do something. Like, of course, like, there's things that you do, but those things are outpourings of God's love for you. Like, we don't go to church and we don't read our Bibles and we don't spend time with God and we don't spend time with the people of God because I have to. No, it should be because God has loved me God has a plan for for my life. God has a calling on me, and these are the things that I can do that will help grow, that will help cultivate that. It's not, I think so often in the church world we get it backwards, and that's why there's so many kids, so many students that walk away because they're like, what's the point of me doing this? It's just another thing, I'm checking the box, when it's like, no, it's so much deeper than that.
Yes.
Were you looking up something on your phone?
I was. Whenever you were talking about that,
You got the tingles.
no. The spirit tingles.
Yeah.
It brought to mind a song that has meant a lot to me, and it's about like being in that relationship with Jesus and like how it feels, and specifically the lyric like the part that like that came to my mind was, I'm caught up in your presence. I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Like, if that's it, feeling that way about Jesus, like, you're right. It's like, it's a love, like it's being in relationship with him and not out of like a duty. Like, if it was duty, you would never feel like you just like close your eyes and picture you're like a little kid and you're sitting down, resting against.
Just kidding. Sorry. Continue.
You're sitting down like at like the base of your parents' feet, whether it's your mom or your dad, and you're just leaning back on them, and like they're just like loving you, like they're maybe they're like rubbing your head and like massaging your head or whatever. Like you're just like hanging out with them. Like they're it's hard to explain, but like whenever I listen to that song, I'm like, I don't know, it really like it puts me in that place of like, yeah, like that's what that relationship is supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last point here, this first half of Matthew 22, 37 through 39. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. I want to focus on loving God with all of your mind, because I feel like that can be the most complicated. Because I think if your mind's right, then your heart and your soul will follow. Because you have to discipline your mind, because your mind is going to think things that are not true over you. Like you don't have to take every thought you have captive, right? You can dismiss a thought like, God, like take this from me. Like that's just not true. But because we're human, like our mind wanders, we can think about whatever we want. And so it's important to discipline your mind and check yourself to keep yourself in the right mindset, so that you can love God with all your heart, soul, mind. Thoughts?
I do.
You do.
I do. Okay.
Oh boy.
Wow. I'm a self-proclaimed farmer. So there's a lot of things that whenever I think about like God and Jesus and faith and spirituality and everything in between, my mind, the way my mind connects it a lot is through nature. Well, there was a song by Chris Renzema.
I love him.
And one of the lyrics is, come tend the soil of my soul. And it got me thinking. It was actually on my car ride in today, so it's funny that you asked that. It got me thinking of like how, and I've gone on tangents about this before, not on a podcast, but if we look at ourselves like a plant in soil, right? Good soil is going to create a healthy plant. and there's a lot more. So, but I'm just going to focus on this part. I have like a list of things about just that whole aspect of like, if we could look at ourselves like a plant. But when it says, "Come tend the soil of my soul," I was like, what feeds the plant? The soil does. If you have healthy soil, you have a healthy plant. That's where everything starts. And then I was like, what is the soil? And like, if we wanted to take what you said and put soil there, like, let's say soil is our mind, right? What are we feeding our mind? Like, if we want to say that out of those three things, it starts with our mind, then we would say that the mind is our soil, because that's where the plant starts. It starts in the soil. Yeah. So that's like, what do we feed our mind? If we, I like metal music a lot. And I've only been in the mood for metal music recently. And I was listening to this song today, and I was like, "Ooh, now I'm in the mood for this." And then it just got me thinking of like, when it comes into terms of music, like I specifically only listen to stuff that has a good message, whether it is rap or reggae or metal or country, like whatever, like because I know that in different times of my life when I was listening to certain things, it did. Even though I like didn't do the things that the music said, it still influenced the way that I thought about things. But with all of the junk that's out there today, music is a big part of like everyone's life. What is that like? If our mind is where it starts, like we're feeding our minds, we're filling our minds up with this noise of music that doesn't have good messages. It doesn't mean that we're going to go do these like things that the song says, but we're not feeding ourselves. We're not tending the soil and creating like a healthy foundation for a relationship with Jesus. We have like a tainted view. I went on a tangent way further than I thought I would.
That's great.
I release.
I mean, I agree.
Like, that's true.
In high school, like freshman year and like probably through junior year, all I listened to was rap music. I mean, it's just kind of like, I grew up playing basketball. Sometimes that's kind of the culture that comes with it, with people you hang out with and stuff like that. Like that's just what's in the car. That's whatever, like on the way to your game, that's what you're supposed to listen to in a way. Anyway.
Like pump up music.
Yeah. And so, started off like, oh, like it sounds cool, like it's hype, whatever. But when the lyrics like started to like become my life, like sophomore year, like looking back on it, it's just kind of freaky. Like, I mean, freshman year, like I was so close to God, like had great community, awesome youth group, and the youth group and the community never went anywhere, but my decisions did change. And I think a big part of it had to do with the music, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. If that's all I was listening to, like, and those words kept being repeated in my head, like, let's try it out. Like, what's he talking about? Like, I don't know. Like, let's go figure it out. And so, like Jack was saying, I like metal music too. And in that genre, it's kind of looked down upon sometimes as satanic or something like that. And that exists. It does in that genre.
It does.
That also exists in rap music.
And country.
And so no matter what you listen to, do research. There's good bands out there.
I have found that it's actually much easier to find wholesome Christian bands in the metal genre than most other genres. Weirdly enough.
So,
like, there's bands that I listened to in high school when I was not a Christian at all that I didn't realize until just now. They're like super Christian.
Yeah. Like, I don't know of a country Christian artist, but there's plenty out there.
Yeah.
There's no good ones.
Not necessarily. They're not necessarily Christian artists, though. That's the thing.
Yeah,
like Brad Paisley has plenty of music about Jesus, but also about everything else.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the more appropriate country artists, but I mean, there totally could be a country Christian band that just does country worship, like bluegrass. I would listen to that. Bluegrass worship.
Jeremiah.
Come down to the river. Any
thoughts on loving God with your mind, kind of disciplining your mind?
mean, I think, excuse me. I do think that, we do discount things that we watch, things that we listen, the opinions that we listen to. We discount everything that comes like through our eyes and through our ears. We discount it all the time. We think, oh, that won't have an effect on me or whatever. But in reality, like, it does. Like music, like that's one of the few things that engages every part of our mind and our body and like our spirit and everything else. So music is powerful in that way. So it does matter what you listen to. That's why I think like worship music is so powerful. Like if you've ever worshiped before and you just feel the
spirit tingles.
You feel the spirit tingles. Like it's real and you can't explain it until you experience it.
Yeah.
And like that might sound weird or whatever, but it's true. I mean, until you experience it, you don't know. But I mean, our minds. I mean, that's what God. I think that's why God talks about so much. I think it's in Romans where it's like, take every thought captive, because. I mean, like I've had stuff before where thoughts come in your mind and like, where the heck did that come from? Good or bad?
Yeah.
I mean, like I've had thoughts before like, wow, like thank you God for like giving me that or whatever. The Holy Spirit speaking to you, but then also you get some thoughts that are just screwed up. And you're just like, where the heck did that come from? And what happens so often is that I feel like why some people get into the pits that they're in, why some people deal with some of the mental stuff that they deal with, it's literally because like I've had thoughts before that I'm just like, what the heck? And like wow, I can totally see how someone, if they were to grab that and hold on to that and that be their identity, they deal with depression, they deal with suicidal thoughts, they deal with all these different things that it's like that's not of us though. Like and if you're a Christian, like you have the Spirit of God in you. So those thoughts, those like the evil stuff, the depression, all that stuff, it has to leave because there is no room. If you have the Spirit of God inside you, there is no room for it. I think, and we're pulled up a verse in 2 Timothy, verse 7, or 2 Timothy chapter 1. It says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of self-control." Like those are things that in our minds, if we don't have self-control over what we think, how we carry ourselves, because we have control. Like God has given us control. Like it says, "For God has given you not the spirit of fear." Fear can be fear, depression, anxiety. It can be all those things because it all kind of stems from that. Like those are not things that you have to deal with. I feel like so often, people are like, "Well, I'm dealing with this," and it's like, yeah, you're dealing with it, but you don't have to stay there. Like because God is living inside you, those things have to leave. They have to. And I feel like as Christians, we don't walk in that power and that calling that God's put on our lives, because when God comes into you, He empowers you to do certain things, and one of those is to walk in power and love and of self-control, which are things that are not of us. Because it's easy to get fearful. It's easy to not have self-control. It's easy to not love. And all like other things stem from that. But that's what God has called us to do. And it looks different when you're walking that way. Your life will look different. People will be like, dude, like, what? It's like, hey, dude, it's because I got Jesus inside of me.
Yeah.
It's because I'm walking in the calling that he's put on my life, that you can look different. You don't have to look like everyone else where you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with fear of what people think about you. Because if God's inside you, you don't have to deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
Any final words, Jack?
Just more plant stuff.
More plant stuff.
Jesus relates a lot of the stuff whenever he's talking to nature, to
Mustard seed, bud. Mustard seed.
and pruning, and like if you look at the science of just plants, nature, whatever. I don't. It's a really cool. It's just a really cool connection. Like, if you baby a plant, so let's say you water it all the time, and you like every day on a schedule. You quit watering it, it's gonna die. Why does it die? Well, because it doesn't need to work for the water. The root system develops up top. It's not a strong root system because it didn't need to be, because it's always being fed this water. Well, what we do as humans is we're like, well, I need my plant to grow. I'm going to feed it all the water. Like, I'm going to make sure that I take care of it. Well, something really cool that God has done is there is water underneath the ground. If you have good, healthy soil, it retains moisture. If you plant something in good soil, the soil will water the plant for you, and you don't have to do it. And it's scary not watering a plant. But that's just what, like, that's how God is. Like, there are things that are going to stress us out, but it's better for us to be stressed out in that moment and learn that thing and grow stronger and develop a healthier root system and not be handed things.
Sure.
And to live a cushy life, because when something bad happens, like, I don't know, knock you off your rocker. Like,
That's true.
That's okay. I don't know if that had anything to do with anything.
That's your
But
final words?
that's my final words.
All right.
I have so much more,
Well,
but
there you have it, guys. Little did you know you were going to learn about plants today. We didn't get into photosynthesis. Maybe that's next week.
we'll talk
don't
about
know.
fertilizer and pruning next week.
Awesome. Snapshot week 2 is complete. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to Jeremiah for driving in this morning from his 45-minute away house. Awesome.
Further than me.
Check out Jeremiah's content. Shout out your stuff right now, your channel, whatever.
Yes, so I am working on some content. Follow me on Instagram at Real Torvald. Starting another channel, podcast, Beards in Progress. So yeah.
Nice.
Am I allowed to be on that podcast? Or?
For show.
Okay, cool. I'll shave.
But
But in progress. Like,
Well, I mean, it can still be in progress.
it for sure. It still is in progress.
yeah.
But like, I'm gonna get rid of
Anyways,
all of
guys,
it.
subscribe, hit the bell, follow us, WESM podcast. We love you. Peace. Oh my gosh. That look back? Wow.